Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.
I had been home from the hospital with my new baby about a week when I experienced such intense pain that I was not able to walk. My pastor and his wife came to my apartment, anointed me with oil and prayed for me and said, Barbara, you have to get well. No one knew what was wrong with me, and I went back into the hospital. The orthopedic doctor, the surgeon who examined me, deduced that I had gotten staph, probably from the hospital at the time I'd given birth. And he gave me antibiotics, but then told me that I would not be able to breastfeed for about 6 weeks. I was very disappointed. And there was this young intern who was assisting him, who was very rude and insensitive and unfeeling, and said, you silly women always wanting to breastfeed. Just put the baby on the bottle and be done with it. Then he said something to my husband, who happened to be there, that he wanted him to leave so he could examine me. And my husband, this kind, gentle man, showed a side of himself that I had not seen. And he said, nicely but firmly, excuse me, you don't tell me to leave. I have the authority to make you leave. And this rude intern backed down. I was so proud of my husband and just felt so honored for my husband to stand up for me, because when you're in that kind of a position, you feel extremely vulnerable. And my husband defended me. So my question is, since we are talking about the most recent episode of Will Smith and Chris Rock, where Will Smith felt like he was defending his wife, what are your thoughts about how a husband, a spouse, a boyfriend should defend their loved one? Sisters?
Well, I'll start. I'm kind of all over the map on this. Um, for one thing, what you said, when we talk about husband, boyfriend, spouse, we're kind of talking in a heteronormative world, and there are also couples who are not heterosexual couples who might have the same uh,
Scenario.
dilemma of when you step up. While part of me says, um, okay, violence is never the answer. And actually, this became a bigger story than it had to have been. If she or he had, laughed it off or flipped him the bird or whatever, it would have been a 1 second thing, and the whole academy would not have been diminished by this. Saying that, there was a history of Chris Rock saying things. And while this was a really poor, dated reference to a movie that I think most people wouldn't even remember. They'd have to think about it. I understand where Will felt, because there was a history, and then of course Jada and Will have been quite in the public sphere about their messy marriage, the infidelities, and all the pain that go with that. So all of that, and like I said, I'm all over the map with that. It actually is kind of nice to see Black women being defended. And this is coming on the heels of the racist rhetoric and attacks that the Republican Party did on uh, soon to be Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, and no one other than Cory Booker actually showing their joy at her and their appreciation. And the Democrats did not do anything to say, you know what, this is a racist question. So I think it was kind of nice to have, even though it was a violent act and probably unnecessary. I understand where it came from, and it's kind of nice to see Black women being supported. Not that that Justice Jackson's spouse wasn't supportive, but there were these constant barrage of attacks. Naima, your thoughts on all of this? 'Cause like I said, I'm all over the map.
Well, I like everybody else who's got a show, a program, or anything else, been talking about it all week from various standpoints. But I see this really as a teachable moment. Everybody who has ever been humiliated publicly
Mm-hmm.
understands.
Mm-hmm.
Every woman who has ever felt that someone insulted her and wished that the man she was with had done something or said something understands. And Barbara, I'm glad you shared that story, because when someone insults you or tries to bully you or intimidate you and your husband doesn't speak up, it kind of changes how you feel about him.
Yes, it does. Yes,
And
it does.
it does matter with if he says nothing and lets you take the insult. And we know the history of how it has happened in our
Community.
experience as being enslaved people,
Mm-hmm.
having to take insult and then calm the man down so that he wouldn't respond because we didn't want him to get beat to death. All of that is part of what we feel. And when Tiffany Haddish was saying, well, she was glad to see a man defend his wife, a lot of people didn't get that. But see, you got to know the backstory, the history of what we've had to swallow,
Right.
and some things that were slap worthy that that were done to us that the man couldn't defend. So we get that part of it. However, there's also the other end of it. And Chris has told his story about being bullied as a child and all of that, and how somebody had humiliated him and he grabbed a brick and almost killed the boy. And from then he was so afraid to ever let his anger get out of control that he actually took a lot of abuse. So how traumatizing must that have been? You got this great big guy come and slap you in front of everybody. How do you handle that? And you can't show anger and all of that. So I mean, on the one hand, his shows sold out because everybody's wondering what's Chris gonna say? So all of his comedy shows have been sold out since that happened. So he not suffering financially, but emotionally it had to have been devastating, because he's reliving childhood traumas. Will Smith is reliving childhood traumas when he didn't do anything when his mother was getting beat by his father. So you have two men who really have not healed from their childhood traumas, and all of that gets replayed on a world stage, really. And as you say, Cheryl talked about it over and over and over and over again. But we really can learn some things about that, and that is that everybody has to look at the unhealed child within, because if you have wounds that have not healed, they will resurface and cause you to overreact to something that really wasn't that big a deal. Not really.
No, it wasn't. And the thing is with that, and I want to say that, I want to say this, and this is going to be very controversial, and my husband is white and Barbara's husband is white, but I'm interested in how many people, white people, want to weigh in on that. And it's almost like I want to say, you know what? Stay out of black folks' business, because we have always had to look at ourselves and our community through the eyes of the white community. And this really wasn't about them. So the
No,
ones
it's
who are
not.
stepping up and saying, oh, this was this and he should have done that, you know what? You were part of the trauma.
That's real. I mean, that's
So,
a conversation
so
we have to have.
and my husband just kind of like, he's tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of hearing about it. By the way, one of the people who did a really good, and she's on Instagram, look for at Lynn Easy, and she always does these parking lot pimping things, and they're amazing. And I encourage anybody, if you're not following her, to follow this. And she talked about this, and she kind of came on the side of Tiffany Haddish of, it's nice to see a black man defending his woman, because so many times the black woman is the most vulnerable and yet the least defended.
Yeah.
We are supposed to be so strong that we're supposed to be able to take everything, every insult, every disrespecting of our of who we are as for our intelligence, our bodies, our looks, our everything. And we're always supposed to be able to just take it. So because Jada was hurt by this, I guess Will just felt like, you know what, she at that moment he felt like, you know what, I'm not going to take this for her. She is hurting. He saw her hurting.
Yeah.
Now, he has since apologized and said he was very embarrassed, and he should have been, because that was an embarrassing uh overreaction to, like I said, a stupid dated joke where I would have just flipped him the bird, and everybody says, "Oh, did you see Will Smith flip him the bird after that?" And that would have been the end of it, because it ended up taking away from the documentarian Questlove, who Chris Rock was on stage to tell about his award. So we ended up losing everything.
Yeah, everybody's still going, what just happened? What just happened? Was that a
Exactly,
gag or what? What?
exactly, and that was
Yeah.
the thing. But
Was
I
that
want to
stage?
say that this is the trauma that we need to deal with within our community. How are our outward men, our black men, responding to this? And
Yeah.
I don't want to go on too long, but there's also this point of, when is violence okay? If somebody calls you the N word, I mean, I gotta admit, and I've sent it to you guys too. I get a real tickle when I see somebody being called the N word by somebody old and white and getting beaten down because they said, I
Yeah,
am
I've seen it a couple of times.
I am not going to lie. That makes my day, because we've had centuries of people feeling they could talk to us any kind of way and get away with it.
Well, that's the thing when you think of taking insult for a long time and it just builds up and explodes. Now, what should happen is that you should never allow it to build up until it explodes. You have to have a way to cut people down verbally or whatever else, because you don't want to lose your dignity and end up going to jail because you hit somebody, even though
Mhm.
at the moment you might have felt satisfaction. But
And if it was taped, other people do too.
yeah, yeah. But then there is an aftermath, you get
Yes, yes, there
arrested,
is.
food, all that kind of thing. Uh, However, we have to be able to also teach our children how to handle insults without it being damaging or traumatizing. And I think that's the challenge, because you have people whose children go to school and get teased all day long and nobody says anything. No, teachers look the other way like they don't hear it, and parents may, sticks and stones but break your bones, but words will never hurt. Yeah, they do hurt.
Yes,
So
we do.
you have children being traumatized because adults won't step up and say anything, and that's why we've had Columbine and other kinds of things
Hmm.
where somebody just snaps and goes off, and then next thing you know, someone's dead. So we don't want that, but we do want to teach children about being sensitive to other people's feelings, and they got a lot of videos on YouTube about bullying and now not joining in when somebody else is being teased or all that kinds of thing, so that you don't participate in someone being humiliated. Somebody's being laughed at and everybody's laughing, you and it's supposed to be your friend, but because I've had that happen to me. Wait a minute, my friend is laughing along with everybody else. How are you my friend? And then
And the
you watch them be
bystanders,
humiliated.
the ones who join in or
Yeah,
say nothing, are worse than the bullies, because the bully is performing for everyone else.
right.
And if you just go and stand, and we've talked about that on this show about bullying,
Yeah.
and that's the thing, is this is what happens. So if you get to that point, even just standing beside someone instead of saying, okay, I don't want the whole bullying thing to come to me. I don't want the gun to slowly turn to me. So I'm not going to acknowledge that someone else is being hurt. You
Hmm.
know, it's very brave to be able to stand up to other people, and also to say, you know what, that was really messed up. That
Yeah.
was really messed up. And when your friends don't defend you, when your husband or your spouse doesn't defend you,
Yeah.
you no longer feel the same way. You don't feel that safety that you
Yeah.
had in that relationship.
Right. Right. I
I
mean,
think it's so important too for parents to realize the importance of stepping in and possibly educating other parents. I
yeah.
actually had a friend uh, where her daughter was in school and they were having a discussion, and she talked about how every day when she comes into the parking lot, there's a person with the Confederate flag flying
Mhm.
from their truck. And when she brought it up in the discussion, how that made her feel uncomfortable, made her feel a little bit fearful, the teacher kind of shot that down and said, "Oh, you
Mm.
shouldn't be feeling bad about that." And then you had kids that were defending the Confederate flag. And so really it blew her up. And her mother came to the school to talk to the professor who was there, saying, you're bringing up the subject that is going to encompass even dealing with the Confederate flag, but then you're going to not acknowledge the feelings and the experience of my daughter. And so I need to tell you where that came from. Had a little bit of a history lesson with this instructor and with this class, because not to have her feelings or uh her perspective minimized or shaken off. And I had another friend who is Jewish, and this happened when my kids were young, where her kids were being bullied by other children, their yarmulkes being snatched off their
Mhm.
head, and people calling them all kinds of derogatory names. And the principal wanted to just dismiss it. And until that mother said, "I'm going public with this, you're going to see yourself on the news on how you are treating my children at this school because they're Jewish," and all of a sudden the principal wanted to backpedal and have a meeting of all of the parents and the teachers to actually talk about this. And so there are times when there is an opportunity to educate people who are deliberately ignorant or just ignorant, to educate them and put things in a light where there can be the right kind of responses to the kind of traumas that our children go through, that immigrant children go through, that Native American children may have gone
Absolutely.
through.
Absolutely.
Oh
And this
yeah.
is the thing that we've got to stop saying, when people went on and on about this critical race theory and, oh, it's going to make white children feel bad. Well, you know what? Considering that I remember, my first experience was before I was in probably first grade, even. My first racial experience was like really, really young. And many children of color, which I say of color in the global majority, always uh, get these feelings and this dismissiveness and the racism, and they get it early enough. It's okay for white kids to feel a little uncomfortable. So what, they're going to feel bad about themselves? Well, you know what, that only happens because kids are born feeling like things should be fair. uh it should be fair. And if you teach them, but this is what happened in the past, so that maybe they see the pictures of grandma throwing rocks at a 6-year old down south, then they will be the ones. Yeah, but you know what, they will be the ones to say that's not right.
Well,
But
of course.
so we need to stop thinking about white kids as being the only ones with feelings, because our children have feelings too.
Well,
And
everybody needs to be able to look at what happened without feeling like these people who look like me or who might have been my ancestors represent me, therefore I feel bad about myself. Nobody bears the burdens of anybody else's sins, anybody else's wrongdoing, anybody else's faults or bad behavior. Just because I'm wearing a black dress, if I steal something, everybody who's wearing a black dress should not feel guilty or ashamed. I did
Right.
this, and no one else is responsible for what I do. So we can teach history and make the people who do the things responsible for what they did without it casting a shadow on anybody else who might feel connected to them, then we can teach the truth. And Nicole Cox, hi Nicole, thanks for joining us. She says physical defense should be reserved for when physical threat on your person is demonstrated. And I definitely agree with that in terms of just because somebody hurts your feelings, you really can't hit them because they didn't physically hurt you, even though you might want to. And she said, but when it comes to cumulative trauma, the Black community should learn the skill of vulnerability with each other so that safe places to vent and heal are created.
I agree.
Well,
I
I
I
agree
agree
too.
as
And we have
well.
to be able to talk about things and not criticize people for how they feel. And this is what why we have shows like this. But we need to be able to talk about things without other people saying you shouldn't feel that way.
yes.
We have a right to feel how we feel. There is anger, there is hurt. And this country collectively is still wounded. You have the guilt of whites and the anger of blacks.
Well,
And
you
Sound
know
like
it's
what?
not
you've
going to
been reading
disappear.
some John Perkins book. That
This is,
cycle that goes around, white guilt, black blame, and
but you know
until
what?
you break out of that cycle, it just keeps going around and
Right,
around.
I
right.
don't think that there's as much white guilt as there is defensiveness. And which is totally different. You feel defensive because you know you're getting something. The problem is that when we talk about people not being responsible, well, I didn't own slaves, blah 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 blah. Yes, but you are still reaping the benefit. To this day, black homeowners, their houses are assessed at hundreds of thousands of dollars less than if they white up their homes and take all their black stuff away and put white stuff there. So there's things that are happening today that
Mhm.
the GI Bill, a lot of the wealth that is that is accumulated through the generations happens today. So even if your parents didn't own slaves, even if you're just second generation, when you come over here, like my husband is, I think, second generation. His father was first generation Irish when he came over. But you know what? As a white male, he still reaped the benefits, and he knows that getting the job that he got helped that he was a white man. And so, you have to recognize that these are the things, and instead of saying, well, I feel guilty because of that, well, no, you just have to be willing to even the playing field.
And I think
Equality always feels like oppression when you are used to being on top.
when you're used to having privilege, one thing we have to do as individuals is, first of all, take responsibility for our own choices in life. Everybody's dealt whatever hand they're dealt, and
Mm-hmm.
you work with what you have, because you can get stuck in that cycle of white blame or black blame and
White
and
blame,
and, and
white
white
guilt, yeah.
defensiveness. You can get stuck in that cycle instead of looking at, what do I actually have, what skills, what capabilities do I have, and if I'm facing discrimination somewhere, is there somewhere else that I can function in a way that will make me feel empowered? And this is where, a lot of communities develop independent communities. I mean, you have so many different ethnic communities where they work within the community to empower each other, circulate that money within the all the various people who choose to develop businesses. And it's well known that during the segregation, you had so many more successful black businesses because that dollar was circulating throughout that community over and over and over again. So we have the power to empower ourselves and not worry about whether or not other people approve or include us for whatever we do. I mean, we have the same intelligence that everybody else has. Sometimes you have to look at, how do I remove these people from having influence over my life, because they're not going to be fair. So I need to disempower them in every way possible. When
And
we do that,
remove those obstacles.
when we do that, then we're not as dependent on what other people think. Just like you're saying, you had so many people thinking, oh, these two black men made us look bad in front of white people. Why are we looking at ourselves through other people's
Did people
eyes?
really say that? I don't
Yeah.
even know if
I
people
saw that a
really
couple of
said that.
places.
Yes, yes.
I
The
didn't
thing
hear
is,
anything like that.
Well,
well, no,
Nicole says the
the
inability
thing
of
is,
non-black communities to acknowledge they're benefiting from or complying with systemic dysfunction should no longer be a stumbling block to our own healing. I
that's
agree.
true.
We got to deal with what's happening inside of us, because people talk about, well, that was black on black crime. Well, what is Putin and
In the Ukraine,
is
that's white on white
Russian
crime.
Ukraine? That's white on white crime. So
And yes,
everybody.
yes, you do have people who are weighing in, and like I said, we need to stop seeing ourselves through the prism of the white gaze.
Yes,
You know,
yes, 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 yes,
so
and we have to, as you said, we have to heal, because
yes,
when we're still carrying childhood trauma
Mhm.
and it triggers us to overreact, we have to look at what is inside of me that is making me respond in a way that is inappropriate. And at the end of the day, this really was a situation where it could have been laughed off and dealt with later.
I wonder what if it had been the same thing if she had strode up there and smacked him.
It would have been different.
Yeah,
Oh,
That would have
definitely.
that would
To
have been
some
a
people, it would have been her
different
smacking him.
vibe.
Yeah, because
yeah.
she was the one insulted. So that
See, I
now
would have
that's
loved
a
that.
thought.
I
And
actually
you
would have
know
loved
what?
that.
But then
Probably,
people would have been saying, "Why didn't her husband get up there and do
That's
something?"
true. That's true.
yeah,
It was a no-win situation.
yeah, it's a
Like I
no-win
said,
situation. Because if he
it,
did nothing, then people would, man, I wouldn't let nobody talk about I mean, you never know,
you
So
don't know. You don't know.
and the moment you act and don't think, okay, the minute after I do this, what's going to happen? And
So he
people
wasn't
don't think
taking all
about,
of
just
that.
like when people, I think I told you that story, what happened here at
With the CTA,
with the
yeah.
CTA worker. I don't know what the altercation was, but I understand that the man pushed him down, kicked him in the face, and walked away. In those 15 seconds that it took for him to walk over to the steps, pull out a gun, and shoot the man, he didn't think, I'm about to destroy my entire career. He's
Yeah.
he's thinking, how dare he push
And
me
his
and
life.
hit
And
me
his
and
life.
disrespect me. What was that?
And his life. He was going to destroy his entire
Yeah,
life.
yeah. So you don't think about that, and this is why we have to think of, if you ever been bullied as a child, ever been humiliated, teased, any of those things, is that still inside of you? Is that affecting your personal relationship? Because sometimes that's the reason why people's marriages fall apart. They got other things inside of them. They overreact to something their spouse
That
does.
triggered.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Which
this,
comes back to our whole thing. Uh and that's the whole thing that we need to come back to is like Black people, we need therapy. We need to find
yes,
our therapist, and me included. I still, my daughter is always saying, Mom, you need to go to therapy. I says, yes, I do know
I've
that.
been telling you that for years.
You know, because of the, every once in a while I go through a depression and I know that I'm going through it, then I kind of talk myself out of it. And she says,
Yeah.
Mom, this isn't enough. So
And
yeah,
sometimes you
Black
can't.
people, and you know what? If anybody deserves therapy more than us, and maybe the Native Americans, but all the people who have been traumatized by what has happened in this country, we need to find ways to heal. And I don't care how we get it or who we talk to or how we get there, but we need to do our own healing so that we are not so triggered by verbal abuse that we take a chance on ruining our whole life,
With the
because
physical
Growing
assault.
up over an
insulted.
instance.
Right. When Nicole says there are systematic battles to fight, yes, but we have broken soldiers out there. We must heal in safe spaces, then go to fight for justice as a whole and supported souls. Yeah,
That's
that's true.
true.
We,
So
we
true.
definitely
Very
true.
wise
Every
words.
Black person needs a therapist and a spiritual advisor. Okay,
Yes,
Nicole, I agree.
absolutely.
All right.
We just
We
need to find our therapists. We need more black therapists out there.
yes.
So you people going to school, think about it.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
waiting for you.
well, we probably have Dr. Debbie back on with us, because she's been a great therapist every Thursday on our Female Solutions show, and we have so many therapists that really we need to have them making house calls, probably, because we need help real bad. Well, it's time to go. Well, for those of you who have a thought about the whole Oscar fiasco, somebody said that, yeah, that situation gave a whole new meaning to the word punchline.
And I was saying, this how come you Black people aren't invited anywhere.
Can't take y'all nowhere. But But feel free to write your comments in and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, 3 Black Moms. And as always, we'll be back again next week, 5:00 p.m. Central, 6:00 p.m. Eastern. And we invite you to join us and share this with a friend. Until next time, I'm Naima.
I'm Cheryl.
I'm Barbara. We are 3 Black Moms. Bye. Hi, I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're 3 Black Moms.